I'm good. How are you? How
I'm
are
good.
everyone?
Can we see the screen yet? Hopefully. Right, there we go. Should be working now.
Yeah, it's working now. Okay.
Okay. Great. Let me know when you're ready, and I'm happy to kick off.
Yeah. So just a bit of intro for Jeremy. So first of all, Jeremy, thank you for joining us today. Meanwhile, more people join us. So let's start with the first of your intro. So Jeremy is an experienced data analytics and a professional for 20 years. He have been working in sophisticated data strategies. He is founder of DataCoff, data consultancy in UK, and he is an advanced user and advocate of R programming. Uh, and he has a love for public speaking and giving talks to people. So yeah, Jeremy, thank you for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you on our platform. You may begin with the talk. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much, Uzair, and yeah, lovely to meet everybody here. I sadly can't see all of your wonderful faces, so hopefully at the end we'll have time for a few questions. But I'm going to talk to you today about advertising. Now, I'm also not very used to sitting down giving a talk at my desk. I like to stand on a stage and run around and get all theatrical. So we'll see how well this goes. I'm going to talk to you about advertising, but in a data context. So I
Yeah,
think before.
Jeremy, have you stopped sharing your screen? Sorry for interrupting.
Sorry, what was that?
Have you stopped sharing your screen, or are you still sharing?
No, can you not see it?
No, we are not able to see it.
Okay, let me try again. Oh dear, it's always tech. It's always tech and it's always a Friday. Right, okay, let's try again.
Yeah,
Right,
now we can
okay,
see it. Thank you.
let's go back. Let's go back and let's hide. Right, okay, so I'm going to talk to you about advertising, but from a data context. So I think before we do that, a few quick disclaimers. I know the title of the talk is Does Advertising Work? Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that advertising does work or advertising doesn't work because it's not a one size fits all approach. It's very different depending on what brand you are, what product you're selling, and what type of advertising you're doing. Obviously, advertising does work because people wouldn't be paying me to measure it if it wasn't working and I wasn't going back and saying to them, look, your ads work. You've just got to move some money from this ad to this ad. So it does work. And we'll talk about how it does work and how that could differ from one brand to another as we get through the talk today. The numbers that you see here might not be the same for whatever brand or product you're advertising. So if I start talking to you about we've achieved an ROI of 3, that doesn't mean that you can go away and say tomorrow morning, yes, that we can achieve an ROI of 3 if we adopt this strategy. It will be different for every brand and every product and every campaign. So do bear that in mind. And obviously, as I think we've said up front, I'm a data scientist. I'm not an advertiser. I'm not a marketing expert. I'm not going to build your marketing campaigns for you. I can't do any of that, but I can help you with the data side of things. So who am I if I am not a marketer and I'm a data scientist? I'm founder and director of Data Cove, as has already been mentioned. My background, I spent 9 years in the City of London working as a business consultant. I've then worked for various different marketing agencies before founding Data Cove in the middle of a global pandemic. I love maths and stats and I love data. I love all things data. Most of all, I love R. You won't ever see me put a line of code together in Python. Everything I do is R. Hopefully preaching to a few of the converted if you're in Karachi. I love cricket. I'm a big cricket fan. I've had a season ticket at Lords in the UK for over 20 years, and I live, sleep, and breathe cricket. Cricket's a big thing of mine, and I like a bit of gambling. Obviously not very good at it because I still do data, not sitting on a nice beach somewhere. And then just a bit about Data Cove so that you know who we are. We are based in Brighton on the south coast of the UK. So the sea is literally just 2 minutes down the road from me in that direction. It's lovely. We are R, Python and Shiny experts. So I'm obviously not the Python expert, but we have them in the team. We specialize in customer analytics to help brands unearth their most valuable customers and find more of them for them. So how can you find the best customer? Where are they? And how can you get the most value from them? We do a lot of marketing analytics solutions as well. So this is primarily where we're talking today on the marketing side, but that will be anything from a very simple campaign piece of analysis to full-on econometrics, which we'll come into today, and process automation. So that is taking time-consuming tasks, usually involving Microsoft Excel, and automating them using R and Python and other tools forever. We also run a lot of different R communities. So as well as talking here today, I was actually giving a talk last night at London R, but we also run our communities in the UK in Bristol, Manchester, Portsmouth, Brighton and Birmingham, and a Python community in Brighton as well. Our Brighton events are all streamed live on our YouTube channel, so do follow us on YouTube. You'll be able to watch these events live. And I think you said came and spoke at one of our Brighton events a short while ago too. Anyway, enough of that. Before we talk about whether advertising works and how we measure it, I'm just going to do a little bit on how we plan advertising, because I imagine that quite a few of you in the audience today, you probably worked with data quite heavily, but advertising planning is probably not something you've come across before. So this was a joint project with a marketing agency who we've been working with for several years. So they're an independent UK marketing agency called December 19. They work across multiple different marketing channels. So they work across online channels such as display and search and social, but also offline channels such as TV, audio, radio, and cinema. And when you're working across multiple media channels, you have to plan campaigns that can fit into each of these different spaces. So how do you plan those campaigns? Well, most people, when you think of marketing, you kind of think of creatives. Now, I don't know if this will land maybe as well with an audience from Karachi, but when we think of creatives, we might think of the drumming gorilla in the UK. We might think of the meerkats. These are all very powerful messages that come out of advertising. And what most people think about when you say the word advertising to them, it's what funny thing did I see on TV in that evening? And so it looks fun and enjoyable and glamorous. But the reality of planning advertising is a little bit more like this. They love the spreadsheets, you know, the tool that we all detest and hate as analysts and data scientists. So campaigns are often planned in spreadsheets that look like this. This is the type of campaign it is, and it's got all of the details here. You can see what TV channel it's on, what time it's on, how long it is, and this is how much we're going to spend on it, how many people are we intending to reach. So these are really complex, quite boring spreadsheets that are used to plan advertising. So whilst your families might think, oh, you work in advertising, it's the glamorous side, it really isn't. You're sitting working spreadsheets all day. And obviously measurement is really important. You know, when you've planned that advertising campaign and you spent hours within spreadsheets, you've got to think, well, how are we going to measure whether this has been successful or not? We put a lot of money into this. Now, we know, marketers all know that if you advertise on TV, you drive a massive volume of sales because people watch TV, people respond and react to a television ad in the break between a program. But it's really expensive. So it drives a volume of sales, but it becomes really expensive to work with. Whereas you can look at other channels like Facebook, which are cheaper to work with, but are you going to get all the clicks on your Facebook ads, or are people going to ignore them? How does radio factor into that? Radio is great. You're sitting in the car, so people are aware of your brand, but they can't react to the ad instantly. So it's great for raising awareness of your brand, but less great for bringing in sales and leads and volume revenue for your brand as well. And so this is why when you come to planning, I think I'm missing a slide, never mind. But I was going to say, this is why when you come to planning, it's all about the human side of it. So what do I mean by the human side of it? We've got to remember we're talking to individuals here. So how do we plan a campaign that individuals are going to resonate with? So great. So we've got a plan. We know that different channels will interact very differently. We know the role of TV and radio and Facebook and search. But with that plan, how do we measure it? Because measurement's really important. You know, it's the old school saying when we studied maths at university, well, how do you prove it? How do you prove this is correct? So, very simple example here. You know, imagine that you're buying an apple. You go into the supermarket and you're buying apples. And there's 4 buckets of apples. And you say, well, we're going to measure which ad. And I know, obviously, you wouldn't see a TV ad for apples and I'm going to go and buy an apple. But I found a picture of buckets of apples and it felt like a really good way of doing this. So, you know, if you bought this apple because you saw the apple ad on TV, take it from this bucket. And if you bought it because you saw the ad on Google or another search channel, from this bucket, and Facebook and radio, etc. Now, obviously, we can't do that in the real world. We've probably been affected by one or two different pieces of advertising that have led us to buy that. Maybe we saw a TV ad and we Googled it. Maybe we saw a TV ad and a Facebook ad. Which one of those has led to which sale? Now, fortunately, when you've got digital channels, so by digital here, I mean things like search Google or Bing or other search engines, or social on Facebook, X, YouTube, or other social platforms, digital channels can be attributed. So I've got very simple models here. So imagine that every marketing journey, you can only be exposed to up to 5 pieces of advertising. If it was about 50, this would clearly go off the slide. But traditionally, marketers have used the last click model. So what does this mean? This means that the last ad that you clicked on, as you can see here, gets 100% of the credit for that purchase. So if you clicked on an ad on Google as the last thing, Google gets all of the credit for that. Now, conversely, some people look at a first click method. So the first thing that you clicked on, even if it's not the thing that's led you to purchase, gets all of the credit for that ad. So Google will take the credit for that sale if Google is the first thing that you clicked on here. Then there are linear methods. So I don't probably need to sell a linear method to a team of analysts and data people, but this is where every step along the journey gets an equal amount of credit for that ad. You also have position-based strategies that people use. So this is where every position on that journey is assigned a certain value. So in this position-based model, my first and last click are given a much higher weighting, and the middle parts of that journey are given a much lower weighting. And then the final model people use is a time decay model. So a time decay model is a bit like a logarithmic scale, if you like. The most recent interaction gets the most credit, and then a little bit less for the next most recent, all the way down to the least recent, which gets the least amount of credit. Now, normally this works really well in a room where I've got people and people can show hands, but I normally say which one is the best. Not going to ask for a show of hands from a virtual audience where I can't see your hands, but when you're looking at these and thinking which one is the best, the actual answer is who knows, because we don't know if the ad that led to that person making a purchase was the last ad they saw, the first ad they saw, a combination of everything. So we don't really know which one of these models are the best model to help us measure our marketing. So that's not great, but we can also make it a little bit harder as well, because not all marketing is online. We also have offline channels. So if we go back to things like TV, we don't, and we're probably not too far from it, have yet clickable TVs where we see an ad on TV and we can click on it and go and purchase the product. So we have to use other methods. Now, historically for TV advertising and some other offline channels as well, this method called spot matching has been used. So what is spot matching? A spot is an ad on TV. So it is a slot, it is a timed time frame on TV that is sold, and you can have your 30-second ad run in that spot. Spot matching is a technique that looks at the immediate response after that ad has run. That immediate response will normally be one of two things. Historically, it could be people phoning a telephone number on that ad, but more recently, it's hits to a web page, particularly a web page that you've referenced through that ad. And we look at the immediate uplift to ascertain how well that television ad has performed. The problem with this is it's only very short term. If you have a look at this, most of the effort after an ad kind of goes back towards zero after 300 seconds since the ad has run. So it's only very short term. If we think about a purchase that we make in life, let's take a really big purchase like a car. If you see an ad for a car, you're not going to go out 10 seconds later and buy that car. You'll do some research online, you'll consider it, and maybe 3 or 4 weeks later, after test driving a few cars, you will buy the car. So this is very short term. The digital attribution models that we looked at previously are also very short term. Now, we can make it even harder and say, but we got digital, so we got our online and our offline. But what about where we want to combine them? What if somebody sees a TV ad, sees a Google ad, sees a Facebook ad? How do we know how all of that's interacting? And that becomes really difficult. In fact, it's really hard to kind of track online and offline performance together. So you can't do it. But then there's also something that we haven't quite referenced yet. And that is the fact that not every sale that we make as a brand is because of our marketing. There are some products people buy because they need them. So if you take, for example, bread or toothpaste, or a product that you buy just because we need bread, we need toothpaste, you don't go to the shop in the supermarket and say, I'm going to pick up this brand because I've just seen the ad. You pick it up because you need it. So that's called the market. There's market factors. The cost of living crisis, which we've had in the UK recently, has changed the way that we purchase things. COVID-19 was a massive catalyst in how brands were making sales, or indeed not making sales, as the time came. So if you're adding in these market conditions as well, it becomes even harder to combine online and offline and the market and get a very simplistic model of what's happening. But there are things we can do to overcome it, and that's where econometrics comes in. So econometrics is here to measure the impact of all of your media and non-media activities on a specific business performance indicator. So it is media and non-media combined. And we do that by collecting factors on media, so how much we spent by week, by channel, but how much also the non-media factors contribute. So during COVID, there was the Google Mobility Index that told us how mobile people were. With the cost of living, we got inflation rates and gas prices that we can look at. So we can collect data to measure these non-media activities and build them into the model as well. And we will always look at one specific KPI. Now, that might not always be sales. You might be a lead generation brand. Your most important KPI from an ad, let's say you're a workspace and you're trying to sell offices to people. It's not that people buy the office. You just want people to come in and view it. So you'll judge your success on the number of viewings that you're obtaining by advertising. And you can answer more complex questions with econometrics. So it's not just what proportion of sales are driven by advertising, non-advertising. You can then start to look at what's the return on investment I get from each channel. I know I've spent £10,000. I know it's given me £20,000 back. So I've doubled my return on the investment that I made. But crucially, you can start looking at this concept of diminishing returns. We know that we live in a world where there's not an infinite number of people. At some point, spending more money on advertising is not going to reach more people. And understanding where that saturation point is helps you make sure that you're putting your spend in the right place. Spend up to the saturation and then put the rest of the budget onto the next best media channel. And that's what the concept of diminishing returns does. But also, crucially, at some point, we might stop advertising. Now, in advertising, we have this concept called ad stock. This is advertising memory. So this is something that you build up. The more you advertise, the more ad stock you build up. And then if you stop advertising, it doesn't mean that your sales from that particular ad go down to zero the very next day. Because going back to the example of Compare the Market with the Meerkats, which is a massive ad in the UK, people remember that for the next week and the next month and even years beyond if you've been running it for a long period of time. So we need to understand what would ever happen if we stop advertising. And that's what econometrics can help us do. Now, of course, this is an R meetup and an R talk. So we carry this out in R. Now, as I mentioned earlier on, marketers love a spreadsheet, and they often give us lots and lots of spreadsheets, normally on a Google Drive. And it's like, here's a massive dump of spreadsheets. Here's my marketing data by channel. So I've got my search data in one spreadsheet, my social data in another, my display data in another, my TV data. I've got all of these spreadsheets, make sense of them. And obviously the tidyverse is a great way to do that. So this is exactly an old slide because Lubridate is now officially part of the tidyverse. So yeah, one of the 9 in the suite now. But the tidyverse is really useful because it helps us to bring data into this kind of single, unique, harmonized data frame within R, where we've got our sales in one column, and then we've got all of our media spends in the other columns so that we can start fitting a model. Before we do any modeling, so this is probably like the biggest bit of advice you can ever give anybody. As data scientists and data analysts, we love data. We want to jump into it. We want to build the model straight away. But you always need to know what data you're looking at. Before you build a model, what is the data telling me? And there's a couple of things that we do. So you've probably seen correlation plots, or may even have produced a correlation plot in R before. We put together a correlation plot because this shows us how variables are related together. An econometric model is a glorified regression model. So it's using linear regression techniques. If we try and put in 2 variables that are highly correlated, we're going to impact the stability of that model. So for here, we've got brand awareness. We've got 3 different metrics we could use: clicks, costs, and impressions. We would often pick the metric that is least correlated with other variables within that data set. So if you look at brand awareness clicks here, if I can get the pointer right, brand awareness clicks, you've got here, when we're looking at core acquisition retargeting, it's quite highly correlated with the cost and the impressions metric, but not the clicks metric. So these metrics would go quite well together. The other thing that we have to assess before we build the model is lagged impact. Going back to that example of a car, remembering that sometimes we see an ad and we don't buy the product straight away. More expensive products, it's going to be a longer lag. And so that's why we check to see if there is a correlation between lagged versions of any of our marketing variables and sales. So here, in these red lines here, we've got a sharp rise in the amount of media that we've been delivering on this channel. I think it's YouTube as an example here. But actually, what we're seeing is that sales tend to rise 2 weeks after these sharp rises have occurred. So we can determine there's probably a 2-week lag between advertising and the sales starting to appear from this particular piece of content. So we would lag this variable by 2 weeks to get a better fit in our regression model. Now, I spoke a bit about diminishing returns and ad stock before, so just to give a little bit more information, diminishing returns, it's this concept here where the more money that we spend, so here's some money that we spent and it's just going up in hundreds of thousands of pounds, very expensive advertising, this one, but you can see there comes a point somewhere in this red zone here where we're spending more money but our sales aren't increasing. And so this is where we can say to people confidently, do not spend above the red zone, because this is wasted money. This is money that you're never going to see a return on. Push that towards another marketing channel. Conversely, here's the concept of ad stock. So this is advertising memory. Now you can see here, this is somebody that's advertised, not quite every week, but pretty much week on, week off. When they stop advertising, so if I take this is a nice easy one to see. We've had a few weeks of advertising here. We've stopped here, but we don't go back to 0 sales straight away. We go down towards 0 as time moves on. But because we built up this memory by advertising over the past few weeks, and even a few weeks before that, we will still see sales come through the week after and the week after that. And it's a really important concept. A lot of advertisers think, I can measure how strong my performance is by stopping. But if you stop, you don't measure the true performance because you don't take account of ad stock. So how does it work in practice? We'll get to a proper case study here. So this is, and you may have come across Xero Accounting before. So they're an accounting and business software provider. So for businesses like us, we would go in, we can use Xero to keep all of our accounts up to date, send invoices, estimates, and potentially also communicate with our clients and providers and partners. Xero sales come from 2 different places. So directly, you can go and buy Xero I could buy Xero as a business owner myself, but also they come through accountants. So some accountants and bookkeepers will say, I use Xero, you must use Xero if you're working with me. So you've got 2 different types of sales here. You've got direct people, that's a lot easier to track, and that's more influenceable through marketing. But you've got the partner accountant side, which is less influenceable, and probably focus less on that in this case study. It's a relatively straightforward journey for Xero. People see an ad, and then either they've got a software they're happy with, or they'll be thinking of changing and they'll do some research. So they wanted to better unpick and measure the contribution that advertising was having for them. So obviously I blanked out a few numbers here because this is Xero's numbers, not mine. So I don't want to go and start sharing trade secrets or anything like that. But the insight that we can get from marketing, Xero advertising in lots of different places. So you've got here's your return on investment, and here's sales. So the channels up here, these are high sales drivers, but lower return on investment. We're putting a lot of money into them, so our return isn't as great. Where we want to be is here. So you can see that the stuff that we're doing through the press and potentially through YouTube are moving towards the right area for us. The stuff we're doing through search is also moving towards the right area. Whereas here, we're getting a very high return on investment, but from not many sales. So potentially there's more we can do with channels that are down here. Where we've got low levels of return on investment and low levels of sales, these are the channels that we perhaps need to reconsider how we use them for marketing, because they're not coming or moving towards any of our top most powerful quadrants within the chart. More granularly, we can start to look at diminishing returns. So, here's an example of one media channel. It's Facebook here. And we can start to look at, okay, what is the point? And the point is somewhere here at which we should stop advertising and not push that any further. But also, we can start to do some quite interesting things and improve our performance over time. So here's an actual example of how TV had, well, not performed, but this is TV spend. So each one of these blue bars here is an amount that has been spent on TV in that given week. Now, at this point here, we built a model and said, actually, you've got your red zone, which is between these 2 points here. You shouldn't be spending more than this top bar on the red zone. And so they went away and said, okay, we'll reduce the amount we're spending on TV. We'll redistribute that budget to other marketing channels. And you can see here, they spent pretty much always within our optimal red zone of spend. Now, the result was an increase in return on investment. So we're spending less, but we're getting a 37% better return for our spend. So we've saved money, we've redeployed it to other channels and done better things with those channels from a marketing perspective. But you can also then start to look at the performance of wider non-media factors. So we saw here a massive dip in their trust. So Trustpilot is a site that you can go and review products that again, don't know if you have that out where you are. You can go and review products that you've used so that you can inform other consumers about your experience. The Trustpilot ratings went down for a period of, a few months. And we can see it really influenced the sales that we were getting through. The contribution that we were getting through the model was hurt when the Trustpilot ratings were down. So we can start to give that information back and say, when your Trustpilot scores are down, you might see a dip in sales. That's not because of marketing. That's because of something external. And you can't do that if you're doing an attribution model. This is where econometrics really comes into its own. And I said marketers love a spreadsheet, so we put all of this back into a spreadsheet and provide it back to them so they can, if you imagine this is a dial, you can click up, you can click down, you can increase and decrease your spend and have a look at what the output might look like, and crucially, what your total marketing contributions are. Again, having to blank out those numbers just for security. Okay, so you're thinking about only big brands can use this. Yes and no. A lot of the big consultancies, which is not us, will make you think that it costs about 70 to 100 grand to build an econometric model. It doesn't. A smaller amount of investment, you can build a light model. It might cost you 10 to 15,000 pounds to get a consultant to build it for you, but it does pay for itself. Now, I recognize that is also, this could be seen as expensive as well. We're currently looking at producing a tool for marketers, particularly marketers in smaller brands, to pull together all of the knowledge that we've got on econometrics and marketing so that they can leverage the power of those models without spending lots and lots of money and making it more accessible to them as brands. So that's a watch this space, and maybe I'll come back and talk to you about that in a year's time once it's been built. Okay. So we're reaching the key takeaways, and then you can stop hearing me talk. But I always say, what should you tell your boss tomorrow morning? Bad example, it's Saturday. But I always say data science is problem solving. It's not a complex thing. And I think a lot of people think it's math, stats, numbers. It's not complex. We're just doing something to solve a business challenge. That business challenge with marketing is measurement. Digital attribution's been used for years, but it's becoming harder because you've seen all the different methods, first click, last click, linear. It's not easy to do. It's always been hard for digital. It's becoming harder for digital. It's always been hard for offline channels like TV and radio. And so we need something more robust. And that's where econometrics comes in. If you build an econometric model, I promise it will pay for itself. You will identify findings that allow you to cut your spending on some marketing channels, and then you can move that budget, either save it or move it to another channel, and it will tell you the true value of your marketing investments. But also, marketing isn't the only thing that influences your key performance indicators. Things like cost of living, COVID, Brexit, all of these things can influence how many people buy our products. And that's for everybody. So as I've said, we're trying to make econometrics more accessible to all brands. It's not a big brand thing, and we want everybody to benefit from the power that these models give. Just before I finish, I know I mentioned at the start that we do lots of our user groups. We also run a massive R conference, so it's an R and Python conference now in the UK. So that is in Brighton on the 14th to the 16th of October. The agenda for the conference was just released on Tuesday. We'd love to see some of you come and join us in the UK for the conference. We've got Wes McKinney. He is the principal architect of Posit. He's the creator of Pandas, for any of you that use a bit of Python. He's our keynote speaker. We've also got crazy Eric Drass from Brighton. So he is crazy. He's an AI artist, as you can see here from his artist impression of his own face. Two brilliant keynote speakers, lots of wonderful industry speakers, 3 days of learning and inspiration, all in Brighton in the UK. There's a QR code here, and I'm sure I can share some details afterwards to give you a little bit more information. I will put one more QR code up, but that will give you the QR to Earl as well. This is the QR that gives you everything. These are all of our socials. Do follow us. We put a lot of content out from our meetup groups and on like R and Python on our YouTube channel. You can follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, join any of our meetup groups, and find out more about Earl. So I shall leave that on there. And thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for listening. I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jeremy, for this insightful talk. Uh, really opens up doors like how we can use data analysis and econometric techniques, even in advertising industry. Lots of insights after this talk. Yeah. So Jeremy is now open for questions. If anyone has any questions, do let us know. Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead, Umair.
Hello,
Hi.
it's nice to meet you. It's a great presentation. I just have one question. As you have defined econometrics respect to marketing and advertisement, it's more related to, I think, a B2C model. And what about B2B? Can you give some insights about that as well?
Yeah, no, you can do it for B2B. And I think we are doing a B2B model at the moment, actually. So we're doing a model for a brand of office space. So they sell office space across London. They've got multiple locations. What they're trying to do here is not look at sales, but they're looking at the number of people that book a viewing of one of their offices. So if you choose your KPI correctly, you could do it as the number of people that are viewing, or we've built one for a law firm before as well, and they're looking at the number of leads that they get through the door. So it doesn't necessarily have to be sales. It has to be whatever metric you're trying to push by putting out your advertising on different platforms.
All right. Yeah. Anyone has any further question? Yeah, Abdullah. Yes.
Hey Jeremy, first
Hey.
of all, great presentation and nice to meet you as well. I just wanted to ask, does your measurement state that television and that sort of media that was mainstream previously, like TVs and radios, is that decreasing and is that on the decrease with with the essence of with the increment of digital media?
It's a very interesting question, and it's one that comes up a lot. So I don't necessarily think the potential return from things like TV are decreasing. I think what is decreasing is the amount that you can spend on television, because fewer people are watching it. So when you go back to that concept of diminishing returns, what you see is we've started to see like that red zone. If you go back to the red zone I was talking about earlier, has been shifting downwards quite a bit. It's quite a few slides away now. I'm regretting doing this, but yeah, so this red zone here, this has been shifting downwards over time. The other thing that you can do as well is consider that all of your channels interact with each other. So if you put out more TV content, it could be okay to spend a bit more on TV, as long as you're spending a bit more on Google to kind of harvest the demand that you're getting. Because people watch TV, what's the first thing they do? They Google it. So make sure if you're spending money on TV that you've got that Google spend to back up what you're doing on TV, and then the two of them can work really well together.
Great. I also had another question, Jeremy.
Yeah.
You have heard that media mix models are expensive to run.
Yes.
Does they mean that they are not accessible for everyone?
Yeah, so it goes back to sort of what I was saying before, that they can be expensive to run. They are not as expensive as some people make you believe. So some people are going to charge you about 100 grand for a model. It's just ludicrous. You don't need to put that much into it. Just going back to this slide here, if I can find it. Yeah, you can build a lighter version for 10 to 15K. Again, that is also expensive. So we are looking at trying to build this tool as a product that anybody can use and make it accessible. There are also kind of open source versions now, like Robin, which is
Robin,
Facebook's tool,
Facebook,
and Meridian, which is Google's tool that you could
Google.
try and use. Your difficulty there is if you don't have the experience of building the models, you may struggle to understand if it's working or not, but you'll probably get a broadly good enough idea of whether it does or doesn't work.
Yeah. Also, there are agencies who are struggling with, as you mentioned, regarding the marketing attribution
Yeah.
modeling, and there is a lot of struggle. Where should we credit that to
Yeah.
first channel, to last channel, or we should equally distribute
Yeah.
it? So, what has been your take? If an agency has been investing into 5 different channels, what should be they trying to do?
I think what you need to try and do is understand how to optimize that channel mix as best as you can. So what we often do for a client is say, which channel's giving you the best possible ROI? Let's maximize that channel to whatever the top range of diminishing returns is. So let's say you can spend £20,000 on this channel. What's the next channel that you could use to then, again, the next biggest ROI? What's the maximum on that? And you keep going downwards to get your best possible mix. Now, it's not quite as simple as that, because you probably want to have online and offline media working together, and TV's always got a low possible ROI. So sometimes you have to balance it and say that we still want to spend a small amount of media on our offline channels to make sure that we can, as I say, harvest that demand online. But it's about using the model to, if you go back to this thing that we create for people, you create different scenarios by saying, okay, well, I'm going to reduce my TV spend to 50%, and as a result, I'll change my Google spend to 150%. What does that scenario give me? And that's where this tool comes into its own, because this is powered by the model at the back end of it.
Yeah. And what type of, I was curious to learn more about the data size if you are trying to build these kind of econometric models. So what was your data set size what was the frequency? Was it in
Yeah.
weeks
Yeah.
or days or months? What was it?
So econometrics is best done at weeks. If you use daily data, it's too noisy because KPIs can really shift quite a bit from one day to the next. Weekly allows you to kind of smooth out any peaks and troughs within sales. So we use weekly data. We would always recommend a minimum of 2 years worth of weekly data, and probably a maximum of 3 years worth of weekly data. It allows you to determine seasonality. So for example, with Zero, there's a lot of seasonality around the financial year end and people changing. You're not going to change software at the end of the year, but you'll change it at the beginning of the next year. So we often see a lot of seasonality around that. If you're starting to use 4 or more years worth of data, you start introducing patterns into the model that are no longer relevant. So 2 to 3 years is optimal. You can do it with 1. The model doesn't fit as well because you don't have the seasonality.
And on the technical side, did you build a regression-based model, or did you use another approach, mix of machine learning side as well?
Yeah, so we've just built a linear regression model or a multilinear regression model. There are other ways of doing it. A lot of people are adopting Bayesian approaches to this now. That's not to say some people are wrong and some people are right. All of these methods are good and useful. And as long as you can get statistical significance on your variables within the model, I don't necessarily think it matters. You've just got to adopt an approach that you can, first of all, that you understand, so that you can control it, which is, I think, very important, and then it gives you the right results.
Great. Uh, yeah. Anyone has any further questions for this talk? Yeah. Yes, Umer.
I have a question that's more less regarding marketing, but about data security and privacy.
Yeah.
How much companies are willing to give their data? Let's say if you are working outside of the government, giving consultancy, so are they willing to give their data, or they provide
Hmm.
some VPN or something else?
The really good thing about marketing mix modeling is we're not looking for personally identifiable information. So we just look for, what is your marketing spend? How many sales have you got? It's not individual customer information. So most people are willing to do this. Also, most people are entering into building a marketing mix model because they want to measure the value of their investment. So they know that they need to, if you're gonna measure the value of something, you know you need to provide it. Where it becomes harder, obviously, is when we do customer analytics projects, and we have to put quite a few agreements in place before people can start sharing customer data, and making sure that we delete that when we're finished with it, obviously, too.
All right. Yeah. Anyone has further question? Thank you, Jeremy, for your talk. I would like to give you one more shout regarding the Earl talk. So if you can show us what is Earl talk and why should
Oh,
people attend? Yeah,
oh,
it would
yeah,
be really
yeah,
good.
yeah, sure. Sorry, bear with me. I was about to stop screen sharing as well, so
Yeah.
just in time. So yeah, this is Earl. It's an R and Python conference in the UK in October, and we'd love you to come over and join us. So the first day we've got workshops. These are run by leading R consultants and Python consultants. So they'll teach you how to do things like building LLMs using Quarto. We're going to have one on Bayesian modeling as well. And then we've got 2 days of keynote talks from the likes of Wes McKinney, Eric Drass. We're going to have a panel discussion on the use of technology within industry. So we're going to have industry leaders coming to give us a panel discussion on that. And then we've got talks from industry leading professionals. So we've got big UK brands and global brands, in fact. So we've got brands like the NHS, which is obviously our health service in the UK, brands like On the Beach, brands like the Dogs Trust, a massive dogs charity in the UK, Snowflake, Red Hat, lots and lots of others to throw in there as well.
Yeah, looking forward to be part of it this year. Yeah, we'll also give a shout out in our community. If you can also share
Brilliant.
us that brochure for all your talks, so I can also circulate
Yes,
in my community. Yeah.
I will share the slides with you later on today or over the weekend, no problem.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, Jeremy. It was
No,
a pleasure to have you in our
not,
community. And in
not a
fact, it was
problem.
the first time that we hosted somewhere outside of Pakistan.
Oh wow! Well, I'm really honoured, and yeah, absolutely great to come and talk to you guys. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and your weekend, and I'll no doubt speak to you again soon.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jeremy. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Thank you for your time. Thank you, Uday. It's nice meeting you.
Thank you, Umair.